Had a class, Shasta College. Um, it's hot out there. Feels like summer, but it's going to get cool again tomorrow. Thank you very much. Um, how's everything going out there in movie land? We're down to last weeks of school. I'm not going to try to be too hard on you because I know you're finishing up other classes, yada, 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 the rest of it. Um, I did assign the last paper yesterday, so check that out. Uh, essentially, write a paper, research paper on a genre. I gave you a list. Pick one, choose one only. Westerns, musicals, rom-com, sci-fi, horror. I forgot to put horror in there. Sci-fi and horror could be in there together. I don't care. Um, and tell me why they matter. Now, if you want, you could pick one director. You could pick a film that they've done and analyze that in that genre. Or you could do a kind of a, research, general research on the genre throughout the history of cinema. We're going to talk about musicals here in a minute, and it goes back to the very first talkie film was considered a musical because Al Jolson sang in it. Anyway, so musicals have been around us forever. So look at that last paper. It's worth quite a bit of points because I want you guys to do a great job on it. But also, I'm giving you 2 weeks to do it. It's not due till I think 2-3 days before school, 17th, I think. So we've got plenty of time to research a genre like Western and write an awesome paper about it in your voice, not a copy and paste job from some website. I want to see your critical eye and analysis. And I don't need you to give me a review, a thumbs up, or a dislike. I don't like this genre. I love this genre. It's not a personal review. You're analyzing in a critically, putting in your critical thinking cap. And you're going to do like you did on the essays. This is a research paper. The difference being I'm giving you a little bit more time, but it is the ending paper. There's no essay due before that. And then you'll be handing in your diary, your reflection, your journal. But that's not due to the last week of school. So be prepared to upload it then. I'm not even opening it up yet. So I don't want you to turn it in now. It's too soon. Because we're still here. We're still going. I'm still lecturing. You're all out there. I'm here. School's still going. So musicals. Do you like musicals? Do you have a favorite musicals? Mary Poppins, Sound of Music. You like them when you were a kid? A lot of people do. Do you like the new musicals? Do you may see the new version of West Side Story? How'd you feel about it? They're not doing that many musicals right now, and when they do, they're usually based on a classic, like West Side Story, which was a Broadway hit and then made it into a really wonderful movie, 1961, I think, 60. And now they remade another one, Steve Spielberg directing. What's your feelings on it? Watch it, write a paper about it. That'd be cool. But dissect it like those essays. I want you to look at the script, the camera, the direction, not just I don't like it. I like some parts of it. I'm not a big musical fan. I don't care about your way your personal opinion is. That's not what the point of the assignment is. Okay, and I know sometimes you want to give it, and I know it's not hard to hold back, but please do. So musicals really have been around us ever since sound movies came out. They mostly musicals had a huge, rich history on the New York stage, Chicago stage, San Francisco stage, and it was only a matter of time pardon me, before they translated them into cinema. In the 1930s, if you remember me talking about that way a long time ago, the Depression was on. And so they were making escapism films and they made musicals with Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, a variety of fantasy kind of movies because they made people feel better about their lives at the time. It was a depression. Nobody had a job. Everybody was broke. They couldn't pay their rents. And it was tough times. But the musical made them feel better. They had enough money to go find a nickel or a dime, whatever the movies cost in those days, which was around a nickel or a dime, um, to watch a movie that would take them out of their misery. A musical, which is they're mostly fantasies. They're not really based on. I mean, they might be based on real life, but uh, they're a fantasy, a fairy tale, romance. Boy meets girl, boy sings to girl, boy dances with girls, and then boy runs off and joins the army and is killed in the war. Oh no, that's not a musical. Sorry, that didn't happen. That's my kind of musical. So the 30s were full of those kind of musicals, and they're very, very popular. In the 40s, there were fewer musicals because it was the war. World War II was on, but there were still some. Gene Kelly was a prime example of a musical industry star, uh, as was Fred Astaire still. And then the 50s came a more of a realistic looking musical, like Singing in the Rain with, once again, Gene Kelly, which, if you haven't seen it, it's got a lot of classic sequences. Maybe you've heard of them, Singing in the Rain. Maybe you've heard that song um, with Debbie Reynolds and Gene Kelly. And they're set in the silent era of movies as movies were coming into the sound era. So it's a good historical lesson on cinema. And some Donald O'Connor does classic dance number that people are still trying to figure out how he did it to this day. No tricks, folks, just talent. This is long before computer generated images ruined everything and made everybody sound great and look great. That's not reality. They had to do it the old fashioned way with talent and practice, practice, practice. Um, Classic scenes in there. I will put some of these samples up. Check them out on Canvas. I usually just set, I usually just have small samples, usually the trailer of the movie. But it's enough to get a flavor of what the movie is, and maybe you've seen it, maybe your parents or somebody saw it, your grandparents, and they loved it. They never forget them. Like I say, the musicals in the 50s were a little bit more, the stories were more kind of down to earth, realistic, not so fairy tale. Like Pajama Game was about a strike at a pajama factory with the lovely Doris Day. And then there's movies, expansive musicals like Oklahoma and Carousel, which were huge Broadway hits. They brought them into the cinema, and there were hits there also. People still had a need. During this era of the 50s, television was wiping out the movie audience. And so, but these musicals were successful because they were on the big screen and you couldn't capture what they were capturing on the small screen of television. Then in the 50s, there was a groundbreaking musical called West Side Story. The music was written by Leonard Bernstein and the lyrics by Stephen Sondheim. And it was a revolutionary play at the time about Puerto Rican gangs against um, Italian gangs in New York City. It's based on the play Romeo and Juliet. One of the gang members falls in love with the Puerto Rican gang member, and the love story is tragic because if you know it's Shakespeare, if you know how Romeo and Juliet ends, it doesn't end good, folks. Yes, yes, it's called a tragedy for a reason. Some of the most marvelous innovative jazz-like music ever to grace any stage or movie. It was made into a movie with Richard Bremer and Natalie Wood later on, 61 about. And yeah, they didn't sing their voices. That was the only problem. They had other people do the singing because they didn't have their voices weren't good enough, evidently. Um, Still a wonderful movie. They just remade it this last year. Steven Spielberg made it even more naturalistic, realistic. He made it more socially aware of why these gangs were against each other. It wasn't just about the romance of turf. It was about socioeconomics and racism and all that good stuff that we're still dealing with this to this day. Still has some of the great music and the dance numbers. Did you see it? Did you see West Side Story? Were you interested in seeing it? I believe you can screen it right now on some streaming channels. I'm not sure which ones. I think I streamed it on Hulu, possibly. Anyway, you might enjoy it. You might love it. Maybe it's your dream to sing and dance in a musical. There was some other musicals in the 2000s, like Chicago, which is based on a famous play um, with the fantastic dancing of Bob Fosse. Bob Fosse was a choreographer who was a revolution unto himself. And after getting a lot of accolades on his Broadway plays like Pajama Game and um, Damn Yankees, Cabaret, uh, um, Sweet Charity, he became a movie director. He got to direct movies and he directed a lot of musicals. His first one was Sweet Charity with Shirley MacLaine. It was a hit on Broadway. Starred his wife, Gwen Verdon, but they didn't deem her a movie star enough, and they needed a movie star, so they got um, the movie star in there, and she does great in it. It's got some great numbers. It wasn't a huge hit. People were confused by it, but some great dance numbers in there, some great camera moves. He was learning the craft. Later on, he directed Cabaret, which was a Broadway show about dance hall girls slash prostitutes in Berlin before Nazis took over, but Nazis were on the rise in the early 30s, um, based on the short stories, the Berlin stories. Um, and it was a huge hit movie. Liza Minnelli won the Academy Award. Um, Joel Corey, I should say, not McRae. That's another actor. Won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actors. The MC, music is wonderful. Come to the cabaret, my friend. Camera work is great. Um, it it earned its award. And one thing about Bob Fosse's work, it's always got a dark side to it. That's why I appreciate it. It's all not sunbeams and fairy tales and sunny days and being happy. They're quite the opposite. Uh, More my cup of tea. And it won the major Academy Awards. And then there wasn't much musicals. They had faded out of the. There was a couple big musicals like Hello Dolly, which was a big bomb. Remember, you saw the documentaries. He rated Raging Bulls. Hello Dolly was one of the major flops that bankrupted, I think, 20th Century Fox and opened the door to the new auteur directors directing more socially relevant films that younger audiences wanted to see because they couldn't really relate to um, the big bloated Hello Dolly, but they could relate to Easy Rider and Raging Bull. Anyway, before that, there was the fun doc. Mary Poppins is a fun musical with Julie Andrews, and everybody probably grew up with that. With Dick Van Dyke, and about the fairy tale nanny who flies in and saves these kids from a horrible existence through song and dance. And she later did the another musical, which was a huge hit, Sound and Music, um, which was based on a real family, the von Trapp family, who were entertainers during Nazi Germany's rise to power, and how they had to get out of there because they were Jews, and they had, and these are real people, folks, based on a real story, and how they had to escape Nazism. So we have some serious story elements in these musicals. They're just not fluff. Then later on in the 70s, we had rock and roll was taking over things kind of in musicals, and they did a musical, which I'm not thrilled with, but I love the musical itself, the Broadway musical, which I've seen several times, called Hair. Maybe you've seen excerpts of Hair. Maybe you know the songs, Give Me a Head with Hair, Long Beautiful Hair. They made it into a movie. Milos Forman made it, changed the story, kind of messed it up, in my opinion. Um, still some of the great music. They just changed the story a lot. Um, so the diehards didn't understand why he did that. He said he was trying to make it more cinematic. But in the meantime, I do believe they took some of the power away from him. That's my personal opinion. Not just me though. The critics felt the same way. But so there's still not many musicals happening now. And then of course in the 80s when we got Goonies and Gremlins and Top Gun and Rocky 1 and Rocky 2 and Star Wars 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and all those sequels, Top Gun, etc. Little room for musicals. The 90s, same thing. We have independent films dominating everything, small stories you can't make a musical on. Usually you can't on $25,000. And so that, or Quentin Tarantino's not going to make a musical. He'd probably like to. Um, then towards the aughts or the 2000s, a couple of musicals poked their head in there. If you watch the documentary on Dogma 9 to 5, which I asked you to watch a couple weeks ago, Lars van Trier, the director from Denmark, directed a musical called Dancer in the Dark, and with Bjork, the pop singer, maybe you know who she is from Iceland, and she won the Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival. It was she wrote all the music. It's a really innovative, really exciting. I thought a real downer, folks, about a woman going blind who kills somebody who asked to be killed, and then they try her for murder. And yes, folks, they hang her at the end. There's always good darkness in Lars von Trier's movies. Uh, she was trying to get money for her kid because she's losing her eye. She's going blind, and she didn't want the child to be left behind without any way to support himself. Anyway, so lately, not too many musicals out there. Les Mis, these are big Broadway hits that they put on the Into the Woods. Uh, so there have been some big Broadway musicals put on the big screen. Do you like those? Have you seen them? Meryl Streep's in Into the Woods plays the witch, based on fairy tales, and Les Mis is based on a huge hit Broadway play and book. Uh, but still, again, not a lot of musicals out there. I don't know if will we see more. I don't know. They cost a lot of money to put up. Um, Someone out there maybe is writing a musical, an original musical for film, not a Broadway hit from the past, which is what they always do because they don't trust anybody doing anything new. In fact, I would say write a new musical with original music. 10 songs, that's all you need. And it could be about people in Reading dying of fentanyl. There's a story for you. You can put some songs to it. Actually, it's a pretty good idea. Maybe I'll do it. Anyway, musicals, do they matter? It's up to you. Um, some people just are overwhelmed with them with love, and other people hate them. I'm in the category of a good film is a good film, and I like musicals. I went to a bunch. Um, when I lived in San Francisco, I saw Hair and Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar. I like rock and roll musicals. I auditioned for Godspell. I auditioned for Hair. I didn't have the chops, evidently, but now I'm too old. But I loved it. Did I like the cinema version of those? No. Rocky Horror Show I saw in San Francisco. The movie is really fun. Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's a lot different than the stage play, um, and it was a huge hit. It was a bomb when it came out in 70. I want to say 76, 75 even. Huge bomb. The play had been a success in England and in LA, not on Broadway. And so they made a low budget film, Tim Curry and Susan Sarandon. And the movie's fun and it became, but they didn't know what to do with it. Nobody understood it. And so they started showing it on this thing called the Midnight Circuit, which was new at that time. And that was a circuit of kind of esoteric films that weren't for everybody. And they only showed at midnight at certain theaters. And so you had to be tough to get up to go to a movie at midnight. And it became a huge hit. I mean, it's still playing somewhere right now. It's still playing in Portland at midnight at the Clinton Theater, I believe. Let's say COVID has shut all that down. I'm not sure. But, and people loved it so much, they started coming to the theater and interacting with the actors. They dress up like the characters. It was a performance. Hugely influential. And now we know all the beloved songs. The sad thing is, Tim Curry, he's so great in there as the main Frankenfurter, the transvestite, Dr. Frankenstein guy. About 5 years ago, he had a stroke. He's been in a wheelchair and he could barely talk. So he won't be doing the musical anytime soon. Anyway, and they remade that as a live TV performance. They've been doing that. They'll have live performances of some of these great musicals. They did Rocky Horror Show, and Tim Curry was in it before he was in the wheelchair. He was playing. He wasn't playing Dr. Frankenfurter. He played one of the other characters, so he was still in the play. So musicals live. Some reason they can uplift you um, with beauty and grace and uh, fantasy. And what's wrong with that? I like to escape with the next person. But you tell me what you think about musicals. Anyway, write a paper, an awesome paper, and start a discussion. In fact, I'm going to make you guys discuss it tonight. Musicals. Why do they matter? Do they? See you next time when the story of film continues.